They've tracked grizzlies through Alaska, hunted jaguars in the Amazon, faced down charging elephants in Africa. But ask them about certain encounters and they go silent. Look away, change the subject. These are men who fear nothing, yet something in the world's deepest forests has them terrified to speak. Tonight, 10 forest creatures hunters refuse to talk about. Encounters so disturbing they've sworn to secrecy. Stay until number 1. Even Sherpa guides won't discuss what they've seen. Hunters live by a code: track clean, shoot straight, respect the wilderness. But there's another rule, unwritten and absolute: some encounters stay buried. These aren't weekend warriors or suburban tourists. These are men who have spent lifetimes in wilderness. They know every sound, every track, every predator in their territory. So when a 30-year veteran hunter encounters something that shouldn't exist, something that challenges everything they know about the natural world, they face a choice: speak up and lose credibility, or stay silent and preserve their reputation. Most choose silence, but the encounters keep happening, and the descriptions remain terrifyingly consistent. Asterisk, starting with a creature that's turned Arizona hunters into skeptics of their own eyes. Number 10. The Mogollon Monster. Asterisk, Arizona's most guarded secret among elk hunters. The Mogollon Rim spans 200 miles across Arizona, covered in ponderosa pine forests so thick that hunters regularly get lost within sight of their camps. Perfect habitat for something that doesn't want to be found. Local elk guides describe encounters with something standing 7-8 feet tall, covered in dark reddish hair with a face that's almost human but not quite. The smell, they say, is unforgettable, like rotting meat mixed with wet dog. Trail cameras have captured images of something walking upright through areas where no humans should be. Hunters find their equipment destroyed, their camps ransacked, with footprints 18 inches long pressed deep into the forest floor. But Arizona hunting guides won't discuss it openly. Too many clients have fled mid-hunt after encounters. Too many seasoned hunters have refused to return to certain areas. The tourism industry depends on people feeling safe in the wilderness. Arizona hunters stay quiet for business, but Louisiana swamp guides stay quiet for survival. Number 9. Honey Island Swamp Monster. Asterisk, the creature that made Louisiana hunters afraid of their own backyard. The Honey Island Swamp covers 70,000 acres of Louisiana wetlands. Hunters have worked these waters for generations, tracking alligators, wild boar, and waterfowl through channels that haven't changed in centuries. Local hunters describe something 7 feet tall with yellow eyes and webbed feet, moving through swamp water without creating ripples. The creature leaves tracks with 4 toes and webbing, unlike any known animal in Louisiana. In 1974, hunter Harlan Ford captured ATM footage of something walking upright through the swamp. The film shows a tall, hair-covered figure moving with purpose through terrain that would trap most humans. Ford refused to discuss the encounter before his death. Cajun hunters, men whose families have worked these swamps for 2 centuries, now avoid certain areas entirely. They won't explain why. They just point toward the deep swamp and shake their heads. Louisiana hunters fear the swamp, but Amazon guides fear something far more ancient. Number 8. Mapinguari. Asterisk, the creature that turned Amazon hunters into believers in impossible things. The Amazon contains 2.1 million square miles of forest, most unexplored. Indigenous hunters navigate by landmarks their grandfathers carved, tracking jaguar and tapir through territories unmapped by outsiders. Quiapo and Yanomami hunters describe the Mapinguari as 8 feet tall, covered in coarse reddish hair, with backward-facing feet and a mouth in its stomach. They say it moves through the forest without disturbing branches, appears suddenly, then vanishes. Recordings from the deep Amazon capture vocalizations unlike any cataloged animal: deep, resonant calls that carry for miles through dense forest. Indigenous guides refuse to enter certain areas after hearing these sounds. Scientists theorize the Mapinguari could be a surviving giant ground sloth, supposedly extinct for 10,000 years. The Amazon's size and isolation could conceal populations of animals presumed extinct. Even experienced researchers avoid discussing certain Amazon expeditions. Stories of equipment destroyed overnight, camps watched from the forest edge, researchers fleeing without collecting their data. Amazon's secrets stay hidden, but China's mountains hold something equally elusive. Number 7. Urine. Asterisk, the wildman that Chinese hunters pretend doesn't exist. The Shenanjia Mountains of central China contain bamboo forests so dense that hunters disappear for days, tracking rare animals through terrain unchanged for millennia. Perfect hiding places for creatures that avoid human contact. Local hunters describe encounters with something 6-7 feet tall, covered in reddish-brown hair with human-like intelligence. The urine builds shelters from branches, uses tools, and seems to understand human behavior patterns. Chinese researchers have collected hair samples that don't match any known primate species. DNA analysis suggests an unknown hominid genetically distinct from humans, but closely related. The Chinese government restricts access to areas with frequent urine sightings. Hunters who discuss encounters publicly find their licenses revoked, their guiding permits cancelled. Official policy is denial. Chinese hunters maintain secret networks, sharing urine encounter stories through encrypted messages and private meetings. They know the consequences of public discussion, but the encounters continue. Chinese silence is enforced. American silence is voluntary but absolute. Number 6. Fouke Monster ***. The creature that made Arkansas hunters question everything they thought they knew. The bottomlands around Fouke, Arkansas, contain some of the most challenging hunting terrain in North America. Veteran hunters track deer, wild boar, and black bear through swampland that can swallow a man without trace. In 1971, the Ford family encountered something 8 feet tall and 400+ pounds attacking their home. Local hunters who investigated found footprints 17 inches long and claw marks that gouged deep into hardwood siding. Sheriff's deputies and state police documented the evidence. Footprint casts, hair samples, damaged buildings. But the investigation was quietly closed, files sealed, and discussion discouraged. Arkansas hunters who once worked the Fouke bottomlands regularly now avoid the area entirely. Hunting guides remove certain territories from their booking maps without explanation. The unofficial hunting ban has lasted 50 years. Hollywood made a movie about the Fouke monster, turning genuine terror into entertainment. Real hunters who lived through the encounters refuse to watch it. They know the difference between fiction and the nightmare they witnessed. Arkansas hunters' voluntary silence protects their sanity. Florida hunters stay quiet to protect their lives. Number 5. Skunk ape ***. The creature that turned Florida's most experienced swamp hunters into nervous city dwellers. The Everglades cover 4,000 square miles of the most hostile terrain in North America. Hunters who work these swamps regularly face alligators, venomous snakes, and isolation that can kill unprepared outsiders. Seminole hunters, men whose families have navigated the Everglades for centuries, describe something 7-8 feet tall with glowing red eyes and a smell so powerful it can be detected from half a mile away. Night vision and thermal imaging equipment reveal large bipedal figures moving through swamp terrain that would challenge experienced hunters. The creatures appear to hunt at night, avoiding human contact during daylight hours. Hunters report their camps systematically destroyed, equipment thrown into water, boats damaged beyond repair. The attacks show intelligence, power sources disconnected first, then communication equipment destroyed. Professional hunting guides have abandoned territories they worked for decades. They won't discuss why certain areas are off-limits, won't explain why they refuse clients who request those locations. Florida guides fear for their clients. Russian hunters fear for their lives. Number 4. Almas, the wildman that made Russian hunters abandon the Siberian wilderness. The Altai Mountains contain millions of acres of unexplored wilderness, where Russian and Mongolian hunters track brown bears, wolves, and Siberian elk through terrain so remote that rescue is impossible. Hunters describe encounters with something human-like but primitive, 5-6 feet tall with muscular build and covered in dark hair. The Almas appears to use simple tools, construct shelter, and demonstrate complex problem-solving abilities. Soviet-era research teams documented Alma's encounters systematically, collecting hair samples, footprint casts, and witness testimonies. The files remain classified, but hunters who participated in the studies still refuse to discuss their findings. Hunting territories that supported communities for generations now sit abandoned. Russian guides who once led expeditions into the deep Altai now work closer to populated areas, refusing to explain why they've abandoned profitable hunting grounds. Russian hunters maintain secret communication networks, sharing Alma's encounter information through encrypted channels. Official discussion is discouraged, but the sightings continue across thousands of square miles. Russian silence protects careers. Indonesian silence protects ancient beliefs. Number 3. Orang Pendek ***. The creature that forced Indonesian hunters to question the boundary between human and animal. Sumatra's rainforests contain some of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. Local hunters track tigers, elephants, and orangutans through jungle so dense that visibility drops to mere feet. For generations, Sumatran hunters have reported encounters with Orang Pendek, short person in Indonesian. Standing 3-4 feet tall with reddish hair and human-like intelligence, it walks upright but demonstrates strength beyond human capability. British primatologist Debbie Martyr documented Orang Pendek encounters during 15 years of field research. Local hunters provided guidance but refused payment, claiming money couldn't protect them from spiritual consequences. DNA analysis of collected hair samples reveals genetic material from an unknown primate species, neither human nor any catalogued ape. The results suggest a surviving population of early hominids. Indonesian hunters perform traditional ceremonies before entering Orang Pendek territory, seeking protection from spiritual consequences. They believe the creatures are not animals, but ancestral spirits that must be respected. Indonesian hunters respect spiritual boundaries. Australian hunters respect something far more dangerous. Number 2, Yowie asterisk, the creature that made Australian hunters reconsider who really controls the bush. Australia's wilderness contains more unexplored territory than any other continent. Hunters who track wild boar, buffalo, and crocodiles through the bush encounter terrain so remote that satellite phones don't work. Aboriginal elders describe the Yowie as ancestral beings that must not be disturbed. Standing 8–10 feet tall with incredible strength, they're protectors of sacred sites that humans shouldn't approach. Australian hunters report encounters with something that demonstrates intelligence beyond any known animal. Campsites destroyed systematically, equipment buried or thrown into water, vehicles damaged with precision. Professional hunting guides describe encounters that left them questioning their understanding of Australian wildlife. Creatures that observed from forest edges, demonstrated tool use, and showed tactical intelligence. Australian hunting regulations now restrict access to areas with frequent Yowie encounters. The restrictions aren't official policy, but guides who ignore them find their licenses questioned, their insurance cancelled. Australian silence protects sacred sites. Himalayan silence protects something far more profound. Number 1, the Yeti asterisk, the creature so real that even Edmund Hillary couldn't bring himself to deny it. The Himalayas contain the most extreme terrain on Earth. Sherpa guides and mountaineers who have spent lifetimes at altitude encounter conditions that would kill most humans within hours. Yet something thrives there. Edmund Hillary's 1953 Everest expedition documented Yeti tracks at 18,000 feet elevation. The team photographed footprints 13 inches long in snow conditions that would preserve details for weeks. Tibetan monasteries maintain collections of Yeti hair, finger bones, and scalp fragments dating back centuries. DNA analysis reveals genetic material from unknown primate species, distinct from any cataloged animal. Modern expeditions using thermal imaging detect large bipedal figures moving across snowfields at elevations and temperatures that would kill humans. The creatures appear comfortable in conditions that challenge the most experienced mountaineers. Sherpa guides, men whose lives depend on accurate wilderness assessment, describe encounters with creatures 7–8 feet tall, covered in thick hair, with strength sufficient to move boulders that would require machinery at sea level. Scientific analysis of collected evidence suggests a surviving population of Gigantopithecus, a massive ape supposedly extinct for 300,000 years. The Himalayas' isolation could conceal breeding populations unknown to science. Climbing permits for certain Himalayan regions now include restrictions on photography and specimen collection. The restrictions aren't officially explained, but guides who violate them find their permits permanently revoked. 40,000 feet above sea level, conditions that would kill most life forms, yet something not only survives but thrives. The most experienced hunters and mountaineers on Earth refuse to discuss what they've seen. The question isn't whether these creatures exist. It's why silence is their only protection. 10 creatures, 10 regions. Hundreds of hunters who have chosen silence over truth. But here's what the silence tells us. These aren't random hoaxes or misidentified animals. These are consistent encounters with unknown species that challenge everything we think we know about Earth's unexplored regions. Earth's forests contain millions of square miles that remain unmapped, unexplored, and unmonitored. Perfect habitats for species that actively avoid human contact. Every year, scientists discover new primate species in remote forests. If we're still finding small monkeys, what larger primates remain undocumented? Climate change is forcing wildlife from deep forest into contact with human activity. Encounters that were once rare are becoming regular. The silence is breaking down. Which creature convinced you most? The government-restricted Yeti, the DNA-confirmed Orang Pendek, the photographed Fouke Monster? Drop your thoughts below. The hunters are still out there, still encountering things they can't explain, still choosing silence over ridicule. Next week, the sea monsters that were bigger than Megalodon. The evidence will shock you.